And now for what you all have been waiting for, Mayor Bettge.
Thanks, everybody. How close? Okay, this is good. Anyway, today is the State of the City address, and I'd like to present some things that have been going on for the past year or so, some of which you might know about already and some of which you don't, and take a little bit of a glimpse into the future as to what Moscow is doing, where we're headed at the moment, and proceed on from there. But first, I'd like to comment a little bit about Moscow Arts Programs. One of our initiatives from the Moscow Arts Commission and the Arts Department is the Poet Laureate Program. And this was first proposed by Alexandra Teague way back when, and so we've had a succession of Poet Laureates, but most people aren't familiar because these folks never get a chance to actually present anything. So our past Poet Laureates, Tiffany Midge, who now writes a column for the Daily News that you might have seen, Susan Hodgins, and now Stacy Miller, who's our current Poet Laureate, and because I think we have one, we should hear from her. So Stacy Bowe, would you come up and give us a recitation, please?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the exciting jobs of being Poet Laureate is that I get to bring poems into spaces where maybe poems don't usually live. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And it's fun to be here. I've lived in Moscow for 10 years, and I know a lot of you through a lot of different routes. So it's fun to be here now as a poet. I was asked to read two poems today, one that I wrote and one written by someone else. So I thought I would start with the more depressing poem, which I wrote. And this was a poem about job searching right when the pandemic began and we were all in quarantine. So I thought it would be a nice chance to look back at things getting a little bit better. It's called Resume. I've been drinking Fireball since quarantined. Not the kind of whiskey you're proud to have on a shelf, but that sweet burn can soften an evening. Little things like the oriole that broke his neck on my window, or big things like millions of insects going extinct before we even find them or give them names. I stretched myself out on a piece of paper today. I drew an arrow to my head and an X on my belly and heart, and I wrote good for all kinds of tasks, a real team player, but I meant giving into sweetness, honey, giving into fire. And this is a poem by Ellen Bass from her book, Like a Beggar. It's called The World Has Need of You. And it starts with an epitaph from a Rainier Maria Rilke poem. Everything here seems to need us. I can hardly imagine it as I walk to the lighthouse, feeling the ancient prayer of my arms swinging in counterpoint to my feet. Here I am, suspended between the sidewalk and twilight, the sky dimming so fast it seems alive. What if you felt the invisible tug between you and everything? A boy on a bicycle rides by, his white shirt open, flaring behind him like wings. It's a hard time to be human. We know too much and too little. Does the breeze need us? The cliffs? The gulls? If you've managed to do one good thing, the ocean doesn't care. But when Newton's apple fell toward the earth ever so slightly fell toward the apple. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. It's always enjoyable to hear what you've got in your back pocket for us. I appreciate that. Now on to more of the meat of the matter. Talk a little bit about Moscow and its current organization, things that have changed over the past year. But as a broad overview and overarching theme of today's State of the City address, we're in pretty good shape. I was left, and we were left, with a city that is in good order by Bill Lambert, Gary Riedner, and the other folks who've set the city on a good track. So some of the first new things we have, of course, is me up here giving this speech now, and others, continuing city council members or re-elected ones. Sandra Kelly, our city council president, Maureen Laughlin, vice president, and Gina Truccio elected again, Ann Zabala, and our two new folks, Julia Parker and Haley Lewis, who join us on council now. Other changes have come with Gary Riedner's departure to retirement after some ungodly count of years, like 29. The very capable Bill Belknap has moved up into that position and has moved up from the Community Development and Engineering Department, which has left a vacancy there that was then filled by Cody Riddle, who we were lucky enough to attract from the city of Boise, where he was a planner down there. So there have been some changes here, and the structure of the whole city has changed a little bit from a very flat organizational structure into one that's more siloed. Each of the supervisors and deputy supervisors have their areas of interest. Bill Belknap has the administration, finance, info systems, and public safety areas, mostly because they don't fit into any of the other bins. Community development with Cody Riddle has the planning, the building, engineering, grants, and the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency. Jen Peffner gets recreation, culture, and employee services, and so they're all binned together. And Tyler Palmer over at Public Works and Services is in charge of a lot of the infrastructure that goes on in the city, the environmental services, fleet, sanitation, streets and storm, water and sewer, all the stuff that we expect to have working in town, essentially. So all of this new structure has created better oversight for what each department does, instead of placing all of the employees essentially under the direct guidance of the city supervisor. As we've grown, things have become more complex. Addressing various legal requirements and programs has become more complicated, so having this system works out better, I think, for everyone. So, thank you to the citizens who voted for the bond for the new police station. Really, really badly needed. I don't know if you ever took a walk through that old police station, but it was pretty ghetto in there. And I don't mean the police officers themselves. I hasten to say that. But in 2019, the bond was approved, and it was to support the construction of a new police facility, remodel the old 4th Street facility, and remodel the Paul Mann building in the City Hall's parking lot. And we advertised it as having an interest rate of 2.2%. It came in at 1.27, which in this day of 7-something% inflation looks absolutely genius. So I'm so glad we did it when we did. In 2020, the Gritman Hospital put the Haddock building up for sale, and the city got on it because it is designed to be an office building, and we were able to acquire that for $875,000. The projected remodel for the old police station was something over $1.5 million. So between the actual cost of the Haddock building plus the remodel cost, we saved the city about $300,000 through that deal, which is needed because the police station ran over budget because of construction costs and supplies and things like that. So essentially, we came out revenue neutral on this one. We got lucky. So into the Haddock building goes the Community Development, Engineering, and Grants Department, and they move out of the Mann building. And then subsequently, we've also sold the old police station off to the University of Idaho for use as the Pritchard Art Gallery, an extension of the Vandal store, and some community space. So that should enhance the use of that old building in the downtown area. So now that the new police station has been completed, it's provided a whole lot more space. And like I said, if you'd ever been into the old police station, they had boxes stacked on desks and possibly even stacked in their laps to try to make room to do their business. It's more energy efficient. It's wired for solar and for e-vehicle charging. Covered parking area for the response vehicles, and the access to US 95 and off to Palouse River Drive certainly enhances the ability of the police to respond to calls instead of trying to get out of the 4th Street station onto One-Way Washington or try to get through alleys to get out to respond to calls. So that should enhance the response time by the police. And rumor has it that the Officers are really enjoying their new space. Paul Mann Building, this is the pretty side of that building. The opposite corner on the southwest shows some bad stuff going on with the masonry that needs to be fixed and repaired, in addition to a new roof, some paint, and putting in a better insulation and better looking exterior set of panels. And into this building, since it was vacated by the community development people moving off to the Haddock building, this gets the info systems people and human resources, info system moving out of the Egan Youth Center into here. And so that frees up space in the Egan Youth Center for, well, the youth to actually use more of that building. So the building dominoes have pretty well completed, and we're getting done with those. The airport, it's nearing completion. The runway is, anyway. We've got a new instrument landing system that has done absolute wonders for getting everybody in and out of the airport on time. Used to be we'd have something like 90 cancellations a year. I think we're down to 3, something like that. Anyway, the reliability of the airport has gone up hugely. We're now in the position of having to build a new terminal, partly because the old one is completely out of date, and we can't even have a second carrier if we wanted to because there's not enough space. So we're in the process of constructing a new terminal, getting financing in place, and the new terminal has got to be done by 2024 because that's when the federal grant monies expire. We have to spend it by then or they start taking it away. As of last month, the direct flights to Boise that has been instituted in partnership with the University of Idaho are running about 72% of load. So the planes filled up very quickly on that flight and seem to be continuing that way. The Seattle flights are at about 86% load factor. And we do have another flight to Seattle coming on here in the very near future. So things grow, things increase, and we will have a flight to direct Moscow to Denver after the terminal is constructed, when we can actually have that space needed for a second airline. And who knows, maybe later on we can get a Delta version off to Salt Lake or something like that. We'll wait and see and cross our fingers and keep working for it. Everybody thinks about housing costs and housing prices, and indeed they've gone up ungodly amounts, and it's proving to be a detriment to hiring at the university to get in new faculty. It's a problem for workforce housing for people who are already here in town, and part of it is due to this, is just the number of permitted buildings that we've got going on. Generally in Moscow, if we're going at a 1% rate, which we seem to be doing, that means that we get about 250 new people in town every year. And with 250 people, that means you need about 100 dwelling units, because on average you got 2.5 people per dwelling unit. We should have been constructing 100 new dwelling units each and every year, and you can see we've been nowhere near it, especially in the single family and 2-family type dwellings. Lack of supply has pushed up the cost. On top of that, now we're trying to catch up, build more houses, more residences, and that's complicated by a lack of trained workforce and the availability of construction materials. The price is continuing to stay high. So this is a bit of a hurdle that we hope to start chiseling away at with the new annexations that have gone on in town and provision of new housing. This last year, the City Council authorized the Entertainment District, which is an area between about 8th Street up to, kind of the north end of the couplet, essentially the area between the two couplets, Washington and Jackson Streets. And it allows people who wish to have events to block off portions or all of that area. And through access to identifications and things like that, wristbands, it's an open container zone. So this really should enhance the availability of downtown to be a real destination for entertainment, for cultural events, and for other things going on. We've already had a couple of them. Musktoberfest went off. I was there along with several thousand of my best friends, and it was a hoot. It was great. In fact, they sold out of everything they had. More recently, the Moscow Winterfest went off very well too, on a brilliant weathered day that neatly sandwiched itself between two kind of creepy weather events, and that was fun too, in spite of the horrors of 1970s style ski wear, which, what were we thinking back in the 70s? Those things are awful. So they went off very, very well. And so this also includes the availability of Art Walk, which is now expanded courtesy of the Moscow Arts Commission and the Arts Department into every third Thursday from October until June. And so we have one of those that just is coming up. Yes, March 17th is the next one, so feel free to attend, see some art, have a little fun. And the season finale, the big art walk, on June 16th, so put that down on the calendars too. Also in the downtown area, and not necessarily to do with the entertainment district, is Moscow's Farmers Market coming up again pretty quick. And that Farmers Market, #1 in Idaho, and depending on which survey you look at, either number 8 or number 11 in the country. And when it's really rolling, we're getting 10,000 people per day downtown who spend things not only at Farmers Market, but also branch out and patronize other restaurants and businesses in the downtown area, and is a tremendous success. And kudos to the department who's setting this up, and Amanda Argona in particular. But on the other side of the coin, downtown is getting used a lot. The current hardscape downtown, the streets, the sidewalks, the curbs, the aggregate crossing areas are now 41 years old and are starting to fall apart significantly. So in conjunction with the Moscow, now we see what happens when we have two different versions of this, of our PowerPoint going on. There, that's better. Oh. The farmers market just overran the urban renewal district. But the city, in conjunction with the urban renewal agency, is going to launch a couple of phases of a plan to replace the hardscape downtown. And this should do things for replacing the sidewalks, curbing, the gutters, the aggregate crossing areas, the asphalt, and provide more electricity for the farmers market people to use across the course of the vending season. It's split into two phases. One is to analyze the existing conditions, and two is to design, do the project, and administer it. So these are the initial steps, and then after we find out what's needed, try to form a budget sufficient to actually execute this. But this would also, in probably another couple of years, push Farmers Market back to its loving former home in the Jackson Street parking lot, which I'm sure is not going to be too popular, but the end result is going to be worth it. The ARPA grant monies. Moscow received ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act, and designated some of that to be used for a couple of projects. One is a small business grant program for businesses that can demonstrate that they've lost money and income due to the COVID. Please apply for that, and a grant of up to $15,000 can be given to them. Somewhat more leniently, because we depend a lot on our community and social services and nonprofits in town. If you're a nonprofit, which is a 501c3 program, please apply and tell us what you'd like to do with some of the money for nonprofits, and you can get up to $25,000 to assist with those programs, because we know our nonprofits, due to tax law change and COVID, have been deleteriously impacted by what has gone on and could really use the help. So we've designated a total of $750,000 for these two programs. We face some other headwinds. Inflation. Municipalities are not immune from inflation. We suffer from it the same as everyone else does in town. Rising costs from personnel to materials to construction, all of it plays into the cost of doing business. And Moscow, like all municipalities, is obligated to provide services to the citizens. And that's water, sewer, police, fire, keep the streets in repair. All of that becomes increasingly expensive, as anybody knows, one, who's looked at house prices, and two, is paying more at grocery stores than anything else. We also have the cost of living increasing. For last year altogether, 4.6%, more recently about 7% inflation. And to keep our workforce of our very excellent city employees going, it behooves us to provide cost of living increases to them, lest they move on to greener financial pastures at Washington State University or out of state. We have a good, lean staff that does excellent work, and we'd like to keep them around and avoid the costs of rehiring and retraining people, which represents a loss in opportunity costs of having to do that rather than maintain a productive employee. Some of the big stuff coming up for us is the water reclamation and reuse facility, and we've got capital improvements there for the next 10 years. First on the list is we have to adhere to the EPA's strictures about wastewater temperature. The water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant needs to be at a certain low temperature when it goes back into Paradise Creek. Paradise Creek being designated a cold water salmonid stream, neglecting the fact that Paradise Creek back in the day used to dry up completely. And how long is cold water going to last in the creek as it goes out? I'm guessing it's probably going to be back up to ambient temperature by the time it hits Toyota. And so in order to conform to the EPA's regulations, we have to put in chillers. And the chillers cost a goodly swatch of money, not to mention the cost of operating them. But if we don't, the EPA can fine us to the rate of $37,000 per day per violation. And frankly, I'd rather take that $37,000 and adhere to their strictures rather than just give the money away and then have to pay to do it anyway. So we've got this coming up in the very near future. Stormwater Utility, this has just been established by City Council, again as a response to federal requirements. And when it says we've got a permit to operate, that means it's like a driver's license. You have to have this permit in order to operate. And so if you've got a municipal area, you have to have a stormwater utility now to monitor and maintain the system of stormwater that goes out the gutters, down the stream, into Paradise Creek. So for that, we've had to establish a stormwater utility that costs everybody in town, depending on how much impermeable area you've got, starting at $7.92 per month, which is down considerably from the original $11. We're also into it because our permit says we have to have this issue addressed by 5 years. Well, we've already gone through a couple years with nothing, and we need to get going on it to demonstrate some compliance or we get fined. So hence the new stormwater utility that is actually not a bad idea. It takes care of the stream, upgrades the quality of the water in it, and helps with the environment, but it comes with a cost that we unfortunately don't have a choice about. Coming up this summer, construction all over town, and almost always in conjunction with school at one point or another, either before or after. There's always going to be traffic. So the first one we have is replacement of the 6th Street Bridge, and we've received grant monies of almost $1 million from the federal government, plus $500,000 from the city to reconstruct the bridge over Paradise Creek right near Mountain View, right across from the Nazarene Church, essentially. And that bridge has been severely damaged over the years through a couple of flooding events, and I'm sure everybody's noticed the roadway keeps getting narrower there. Narrower and narrower, and eventually it's going to go away. So the bridge that goes in there is meant to replace that, and here on our map, be right about there. This is Mountain View Road, and north is over here, and a roundabout is due to be constructed this summer too, in conjunction with the construction of the bridge. We only want to disrupt traffic once across the course of a year. So the construction of the roundabout here at 6th and Mountain View will help facilitate traffic flow through there, also slow down the traffic speed a little bit without actually stopping it, hopefully make things more efficient in that intersection. The project also extends south down to Joseph Street with the construction of curbs, gutters, sidewalk, bike lanes through that stretch too, which has been deficient for years. So start planning now. People that live out on that side of town, start thinking about your alternative routes now, because come summer, you ain't going to be able to get through any of this. So think about where you're going to go to get to work or the west side of town. Also this summer coming on, we have the 3rd and 6th Street improvements, and this is through a safety grant from the state, plus some money from the Urban Renewal District as well, and will involve mostly work on sidewalks, enhancing the sidewalks. And anybody, I don't know how many people actually walk, but if you've traversed 3rd Street heading west, you go along sidewalk, curb cut, sidewalk, curb cut, sidewalk, curb cut. And all these curb cuts were from the residue of old service stations and other businesses that had access back and forth. Well, a lot of that has gone away, and now all it does is make pedestrians real like they've been out drinking a little too much as they stagger back up the sidewalk. So this replaces lighting fixtures, improves the sidewalks, undergrounding of the overhead utilities has been going on, and this is in conjunction of both the city and the Urban Renewal Agency to get these done. So 3rd Street and 6th shouldn't be too much disruption of the traffic because most of the work goes on the sidewalks. Paradise Creek flooding study, always a problem. Ever since we've not been able to, as we were discussing earlier, drop bobcats and caterpillars down into the bed of Paradise Creek and just scrape out all of the farms from upstream that have washed into town, it's been sedimenting in. And the sedimenting in has led to flooding issues, both at the 6th Street Bridge, which we're trying to replace, but also upstream in the Bridge Street Bridge area, which floods frequently. So we've inaugurated a study to look at what we can do to mitigate flooding through Paradise Creek. And on the chart here, I hasten to add that the gold colored area is not the floodplain. That's not the flooding area. That is, however, the area of the study that we're looking at and mapping out to develop models of how the stream behaves, and then starting at the upstream end of it, start mitigating the flood. Creation of riparian areas, flood area overfill zones that can go underwater. For example, Mountain View Park is a candidate for being used as a flood water retention site to minimize the amount of water flooding downstream and causing problems with residences. So this is a study area, and come this spring we should have some alternatives and preliminary designs in place to begin working toward to mitigate flooding that occurs along Paradise Creek. Coming up very soon is our climate action plan, where we're trying to address issues of climate change and how to deal with it both on a city basis and a city government basis to try to mitigate climate change on our local level. We need to start locally and create a map, create a system to help assist through this. So the staff has drafted a very comprehensive action plan in conjunction with the Sustainable Environment Commission and the Climate Action Work Group. And we are looking to reduce greenhouse gases, enhance carbon sequestration, and address other ways of mechanisms we can take as a city to mitigate climate change. Things like when vehicles age out in the city fleet, replace them with electric, things like that. Other topics in this rather considerable plan that we were handed last night to look through. But anybody who's interested can get a hold of this plan online starting, what date? Tomorrow. So starting tomorrow through March 24th, go online to the city, pull the plan down, look it over, feel free to comment. Give us your ideas. What should we be doing? What can we be doing to help mitigate climate change from a city point of view? And when all of that is done, go through it, assemble all of the responses, and the council will have a workshop on April 25th to determine a way forward through this. So very serious about trying to set an example for the rest of the city. The city government itself can only do so much. What we can do is to try to set an example and show what works, and hopefully bring the rest of the citizens of the city along with us to address these issues. Also, what are we going to do for water? We, in theory, have a fair amount of water left down below our feet, 900 feet or so, but we need to identify an alternative water source. And sooner is better than later for this, because I don't want to wait around to hear a giant sucking sound coming from below and going, oh geez, we have no water, what do we do? We need to get started on this in conjunction with the Pollution Space and Aquifer Committee, who's putting out some plans coming up here very soon, and that should be coming on quickly. 4 proposed scenarios have been provided, and now it's a matter of chewing through them and deciding which ones are the best. Idaho has this programmed in for a $70 million grant to assist with this project, and the $70 million really covers a majority of a project, but certainly not all of it. It's still going to be a major, major expense, somewhere in the vicinity of $80 to $100 million to secure an alternative water source. But the point being, we've got to start now in order to secure the water source for the future and enable us to continue to prosper as a community. We've done a good job of conserving water. I guess it's actually closer to 11%, but 11% less water now than we were in 1992, despite having grown 35%. I think that is a remarkable compliment to the conservation that people in town have gone through. And from recent surveys from PBAC, it seems that more people want to get involved with water conservation to do what they can. That being said, we can't conserve ourselves into stabilization of the aquifer. It's going to keep going down. Hence, we need to find this alternative water supply and start implementing it. And starting now is better than waiting until we hear that sucking sound from below. Also, in addition, we've had an issue with our emergency services radio infrastructure. There are dead places all over town. A lot of the university buildings you cannot get a radio signal into. And so if police are needing to respond to something and they drop out of radio contact, this is clearly not good. If a fireman is in a house that's burning down, gets their boots stuck in a floorboard or something like that, hollering for help, and they can't get a radio signal, this is not good. And it turns out that establishing a new radio system is shockingly expensive, $3.4 million, but we've been accumulating funds in capital accrual for years and should be able to pull this off in the next couple of years. One of the major impediments has been working with the FCC about location of the repeater towers, what frequencies are you using? Are you going to be stepping on somebody else's frequency? We already have troubles with that occasionally. But this one is a major challenge area that City Council has chosen to push forward and actually get done. And it is a program that truly needs to be addressed. South Moscow infrastructure, as everybody knows, US 95 through the Idaho Department of Transportation is coming in from the south with 4 lanes after many, many years of languishing on somebody's shelf due to litigation mainly, but it's coming in. And so what we're thinking is we would like to be able to provide utilities south of the South Fork of the Palouse River, get them in place before the highway comes in, so that as business begins to occupy the area, and it seems like it's a natural place, the intersection of the new highway and the old down near Prime Land, if we extend the utilities out there, the water and the sewer, we don't have to rip up a perfectly good new road in a few years to extend them later. So rather than do that, let's put it in now. And so we're working in conjunction with the ITD to accomplish that goal. And so things are proceeding. They should start construction this year, I think, I hope, and let's get that one done too. Additionally, we're looking to provide an undercross at the intersection of Highways 8 and 95. And the undercross is something similar to what's out at the Steiner-White Highway 8 intersection at Paradise Creek, where the pedestrian pathway and the Paradise Path goes underneath the highway there and really keeps the pedestrians from getting crossways with traffic. We want to do the same thing at Highways 8 and 95, where I got caught there on the way out here with the no right turn on red thing comes on, and you sit there for a solid best part of a minute waiting for students to languidly parade across and get out of the way. So we would like to have the undercross there where pedestrians and bikes can go underneath US 95, come out the other side, and then go back up and connect with the Paradise Path up by the entrance to the university. So that's coming on too very quickly. I think we'll get support from ITD on that because it gets pedestrians out of the way of their road and really enhances safety for everybody. And with that, we're at the end. Happy to take questions that anybody might have. Oh, this is looking beneficial. I like it. So. Sam, nobody has any questions. Oh, wait.
I can't let them off the hook. Nobody said anything about SEL and what the impact is going to be on SEL on Moscow as far as water, population, and with the 4-lane going to be complete into Lewiston where they have another facility, what kind of change the city may look at south of town along Old 95, which will be, I think, the next big development area.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Schweitzer moving in is, relative to water, is going to be negligible. The circuit board plant that they're putting in will probably use less water than the employees flushing the toilets in that facility. So it's a very water conservative setup. But you're right, development will occur down there, which is part of why we're extending services south of the intersection of the new 95 with the old 95. And I do anticipate that things will begin to grow to the south and then probably to the south and the east down along the South Fork of the Palouse River. And so it behooves us to be braced for that. And as everybody knows, we also have the Eddington subdivision that went in out there, about 200 acres of annexation, of which the first 27 acres have been platted out. And interestingly, before there's even roads in there and there's just a bunch of muddy dirt shoved around at the moment, has all been like 90% acquired already. So we're expecting to see phase 2 coming on this summer just because phase 1 went so bloody fast. And again, that's a reflection of the paucity of housing that we have available to us, and especially affordable. The phase 1 is designed to be a great many townhome style dwellings, and so that should hopefully make them less unaffordable than they would be otherwise. Oh, Dave McGraw.
Art, I've said this many times over the past year, the only art I like. Only public art I like. In the past, Latah County, University of Idaho, and the city of Moscow have had a fantastic working relationship. That doesn't happen all over the state of Idaho. Just south of us, in fact, we've had our friends from the south have sued the city has sued the county has sued the city many times over different various issues. Do you anticipate a working relationship continuing on as it has? We've worked great things with the airport. We've done some other good projects. Do you anticipate the same working relationship moving forward?
I don't always expect it, but I anticipate it, and I really would like to have that go on. Working together with the county has been very beneficial to both the city and the residents of the county, I think, in terms of regional work together. The Partnership for Economic Prosperity is a good example, works with the city and works with the county to enhance the economics of the whole area, the whole region. The county participates with the city on projects like the airport, which also involves our partners across the border in Pullman, Whitman County, Washington State University, back here at the University of Idaho, and various private entities. And so I think we're a great example of regional cooperation, and find that we get the best results working together to accomplish projects as opposed to meeting each other across the bench in the courtroom where nobody, well, except the lawyers, actually ever win. That would seem to be it, Sam. We've gotten through this in pretty record time.